The price of ignoring parents' advice. When I was young, I truly believed I knew more than everyone around me, especially my parents. I thought I understood life better than they did. I thought I was smarter, sharper, more updated with the world. I convinced myself that their advice came from a different era, an outdated world that no longer existed, a world where things were slow, predictable, simple. And because of that, I believed their words didn't apply to me. When my mom told me, be careful who you trust. Not everyone who smiles at you is your friend, I laughed. When my dad warned, stop spending money like it's endless. One day you'll understand how hard it is to earn. I nodded just to end the conversation, then forgot about it seconds later. When my parents begged me to study, to build discipline, to think about my future, I replied with the same careless sentence every time. Relax, I know what I'm doing. But the truth was, I didn't know anything at all. I had no clue how life worked, no clue how people worked, no clue how the world worked. I lived inside a bubble built from youthful arrogance, from the illusion that being young meant being invincible. I thought I was too smart to fail, too lucky to fall, too unique to struggle. I believed that life would always open its doors for me simply because I existed, simply because I was me. And every time my parents tried to guide me, I treated their love like noise. I heard their voices, but I didn't listen. I thought their fear was unnecessary, their warnings were annoying, their concern was exaggerated. I thought they worried too much. I thought they didn't understand my generation. I thought they were old, too old to know anything about the world I lived in. And so I did what many young people do. I ignored them. I ignored everything. Their advice, their lessons, their experiences, their warnings, all of it. Because deep down, I believed I would never face the consequences they talked about. I believed those things happened to other people, not to me. One night, my father walked into my room while I was laughing loudly on a call with my friends. When I hung up, he just stood there, silent for a moment, as if searching for the right words. Finally, he said, I'm not telling you how to live. I just want you to see further than today. I smiled, a careless, arrogant smile. Dad, I know. Trust me, I'm fine. Really? But I wasn't fine, not even close. My father continued, his voice calm, but his eyes heavy with worry. I don't need you to succeed right now. I only need you to listen. You're walking down a road I've already walked. I know where the holes are. I know where the cliffs are. I interrupted him without hesitation. Dad, come on. It's not like your time anymore. Things are easier now. Life is different. I just want to live the way I want. He didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't try to force me to understand. He simply breathed deeply and gave me a long, quiet look. One of those looks filled with fear, love, and helplessness. The look of a parent watching their child run straight toward a storm. Then he turned around and left. I didn't know it at the time, but that moment, the way he looked at me, would someday return to me like a knife to the chest. Back then, I kept living exactly how I wanted. I spent money faster than I could count it. I trusted the wrong people. I wasted time like it was infinite. I skipped responsibilities like they meant nothing. I surrounded myself with people who laughed a lot but cared very little. And every time my parents tried to warn me again, I brushed them off with the same foolish confidence. I'm grown now. I can handle my own life. But here's the truth no young person wants to hear. No one can handle life if they've never learned how to stand on their own 2 feet. And I had never learned. I just assumed everything would magically work out, that things would fall into place, that opportunities would come to me, that I was too smart to fail, too lucky to break, too special to lose. And then came the first signs, small, subtle warnings from life itself. I lost money because I trusted the wrong friend. I failed classes because I skipped too many days. I got into trouble because I thought rules didn't apply to me. My parents warned me again. I ignored them again. I told myself it was just bad luck. I'll be fine. But life doesn't let you ignore lessons forever. Sooner or later, life teaches you the hard way. And for me, that day came faster than I expected. It came all at once, like a wave crashing down on everything I thought I knew. The friends I trusted, they warned me more times than I can count. My father with his quiet, steady voice, and my mother with her gentle eyes that always seemed to see further than I ever could. But I was too young, too confident, too caught up in the illusion that life would always bend to my will. My father told me, "You should save your money. Don't spend carelessly. You won't always have what you have now." I remember rolling my eyes even if I didn't do it physically. In my mind, I was saying, "Relax, Dad. Money comes and goes. I'll be fine." I didn't understand money, not its value, not its weight, not how hard it is to earn, not how quickly it disappears when you don't respect it. To me, money was just paper that existed whenever I needed it. I thought it was guaranteed. I thought life owed it to me. Then my mother would step in, trying to gently put my life back on track. "Stay away from those friends," she said more than once. "They don't care about you the way you think. They want fun, not your future." But in my mind, my friends were my real family. They were the people who made me laugh, who told me what I wanted to hear, who praised me for things that didn't matter. Mom didn't understand, I told myself. She couldn't keep up with how friendships work nowadays. She didn't know what it meant to have people who treated you like you were the center of the world. At least that's what I believed. I never stopped to ask myself why they treated me that way. Maybe because I paid for everything. Maybe because I was easy to take advantage of. Maybe because I was naive. My father kept urging me to study, to learn something, to prepare myself for real life. "Build skill," he told me. "A person without skills is a person without a future." But I didn't want to hear it. I was tired of hearing about the future. I wanted to live now in this moment, in the temporary rush of youth and freedom. I told him, "Dad, the world doesn't work like before. I don't need to stress like you did." I didn't realize how arrogant that sounded, how blind I was to the reality I had never faced, how quick I was to dismiss decades of wisdom simply because I was young and loud. My mother would say, "You don't see what we see, but one day you will understand." I would shrug, smile, and act like I knew everything. I genuinely believed that my parents were overreacting. I told myself they worried too much. I told myself they didn't trust me. I told myself they didn't understand the world I lived in. I didn't see that I was the one who didn't understand. Not them. Me. At that age, I thought responsibility was boring. I thought caution was fear. I thought discipline was punishment. I thought advice was interference. I didn't understand that everything my parents said came from a place I couldn't see yet, a place called experience, a place built from mistakes, heartbreaks, losses, and victories that shaped who they had become. They were not trying to control me. They were trying to protect me from paths they had walked, from pain they had felt, from traps they had fallen into. But I was too blind to see it. Every time they warned me about my spending, I answered, I know, even though I didn't. Every time they warned me about friends who used me, I said, you're worrying for nothing, even though they weren't. Every time they told me to study, to work hard, to think long term, I said, times are different now. Even though time never changes, only people do. My arrogance was like a shield that protected me from the truth I wasn't ready to face. Truth like, life is not easy. People are not always kind. Money is not endless. Friends are not always real. And parents are not always here. But none of that mattered to me then. I thought my parents were exaggerating. I thought they were too strict, too old-fashioned, too dramatic. I thought I was smarter than them. And because of that, I never listened, truly listened. I nodded, but I ignored. I smiled, but I dismissed. I heard, but I didn't absorb. My parents were speaking from years of mistakes. I was responding from minutes of experience. The gap between us was massive, but only they could see it. I was too busy believing I was untouchable, unstoppable, unbreakable. Every warning they gave me slid right off my skin. Every lesson they tried to teach bounced off the walls of my stubbornness. I told myself I was in control. I told myself nothing bad would happen. I told myself parents always overreact, but parents don't overreact. Parents foresee. And children think they know everything until the day life proves them wrong. At the time, nothing they said felt important. I shrugged off every word as if wisdom was optional and consequences were imaginary. I thought, why worry when everything is fine? I didn't realize that everything is fine only until it isn't. And when that moment comes, when life finally asks you to pay the price for ignoring the very people who would die to protect you, the fall is devastating. But back then, I didn't feel any danger at all. I felt invincible. I felt untouchable. I felt like the world was soft and forgiving, like nothing I did could truly hurt me. I had no idea that every choice I made in arrogance was a seed, one that would grow into consequences far bigger than I could handle. My parents tried to stop me from planting those seeds, but I pushed their hands away. They tried to slow me down, but I ran faster. They tried to protect me, but I mistook their protection for control. I mistook their love for limitation. I thought I was too grown to listen, too smart to fail, too young to worry. I thought they were wrong simply because they were older. I thought I was right simply because I was young. And so, day after day, warning after warning, lesson after lesson, I ignored them all until the day life decided to show me exactly how wrong I was. Disappeared the moment I needed them. The opportunities I thought I deserved slipped away. The money I wasted was suddenly gone. My future, the future I thought I had plenty of time to build, started collapsing in front of me. And for the first time in my life, I felt something I had never felt before. Fear, real fear. The kind of fear that grabs your chest and squeezes it until you can't breathe. The kind that whispers, you messed up. You really messed up. I remember sitting alone in my room the night everything went wrong. The lights were off, my phone was silent. No messages, no calls, no friends. Nothing but the sound of my own heart beating way too fast. And in that cold, quiet darkness, every sentence my parents ever said to me came back, one by one, word for word. Every warning, every concern, every piece of advice, and with every memory, a knife twisted deeper into my chest. They were right. I was wrong. Not just wrong, I was blind, arrogant, reckless. I wasn't the smart, independent person I pretended to be. I was just a kid who refused to listen, a kid who thought he knew everything, a kid who didn't realize his parents weren't trying to control him. They were trying to protect him. That night, for the first time in years, I wanted to go home, truly go home, not the physical place, but the emotional safety I once took for granted. I wanted to hear my parents' voices. I wanted to sit with them. I wanted to say, I'm sorry, you were right. I wanted to admit the truth, not to them, but to myself, that ignoring their advice was the worst decision of my life. And what I didn't know that night was that everything I had faced so far was only the beginning. The real lesson, the real price, was waiting for me beyond that moment. The price of pride, the price of stubbornness, the price of believing I knew more than the two people who loved me most in this world. That night, as I sat alone with the weight of my choices crushing me, I finally understood something that would change my life forever. Parents don't give advice to limit you. They give advice to save you from the very pain they once went through. And ignoring that advice always comes with a cost. The more my parents warned me, the more I felt the need to prove that I didn't need their guidance. It wasn't just ignorance anymore. It was pride. A stubborn, blinding pride that convinced me I was capable of figuring everything out on my own. There's something strange about being young. You confuse freedom with rebellion, independence with recklessness, confidence with arrogance. Every time my parents tried to talk to me, I felt like they were trying to limit me, control me, shape me into someone I didn't want to be. So naturally, I pushed back. I pushed back hard. I remember one night vividly. My father sat at the dining table with a stack of unpaid bills and financial papers spread in front of him. He was exhausted from work, his shirt sleeves rolled up, his glasses slightly crooked from rubbing his temples too many times. He looked at me and said, "Sit down for a second. I need to talk to you." I shrugged, dragged a chair, and sat. I wasn't really listening. My phone was in my hand. My mind was somewhere else. My father cleared his throat and said, "Son, you need to slow down. You're spending too much. You're going out too often. You're depending too much on things you haven't earned." I took a deep breath and answered in the most dismissive tone possible, "Dad, I know how to handle myself. It's not a big deal." He looked at me with tired eyes, not angry, not frustrated, just deeply disappointed. "You think life is easy because you've never been without support," he said. "You think money is simple because you've never had to earn it. You think friends are loyal because you've never been betrayed. But one day you will understand. And I hope when that day comes, you won't be alone." I didn't want to hear that. I didn't want to feel the weight of his words, so I did what I always did. I brushed it off. Dad, things aren't like your time, I said. You're overthinking everything. You worry too much. My father didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. He simply looked down at the papers again, as if realizing that nothing he said could reach me. And instead of feeling guilty, I felt relieved. I thought I had won the conversation. I thought I had proven that I was in control. I had no idea how wrong I was. My mother tried a different approach. She wasn't strict like my father. Her warnings came wrapped in softness, in fear, in care. One afternoon, she found me getting ready to go out. An expensive outfit, expensive shoes, expensive everything. She stood by the door holding a basket of laundry and said, "Sweetheart, can we talk for a moment?" I sighed, annoyed but pretending to be patient. "Sure, Mom. What is it now?" She hesitated, which I hated. It made me feel like she was tiptoeing around me. "I've been noticing the people you spend time with," she said. "I know they seem fun, but I don't think they care about you." Not really. They care about what you pay for. They care about what you offer, not who you are. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because I didn't want to believe she could be right. "Mom, you don't know them," I said. "You don't understand our generation. We're different. We're not like before." She looked at me, and for a moment her eyes were filled with a sadness I couldn't explain. "I don't have to know them," she said quietly. "I just have to know you. And I can see that they are not helping you become better. They're pushing you further away from the person you're meant to be." Her words cut deeper than I expected, but instead of listening, I put up my guard. "Mom, stop worrying, I'm fine." She smiled a tired smile, the kind that hides fear behind love. "One day," she whispered, "you will see what I see. I just hope that day doesn't hurt too much." I walked past her without looking back, pretending her words didn't matter, pretending I was too mature for such conversations. But inside, a tiny part of me was uncomfortable. A tiny part of me knew she wasn't wrong. I just didn't want to admit it, because admitting she was right meant admitting I was wrong. And at that age, being wrong felt like the end of the world. So I buried that discomfort deep inside and convinced myself that my friends were loyal, that money was easy, that life would always stay soft and forgiving. I kept living like nothing could touch me. I kept spending money my parents worked hard to earn. I kept failing classes while telling myself grades didn't matter. I kept partying with people who would vanish the moment trouble appeared. I closed my ears to wisdom and opened my heart to foolishness. I didn't realize I was building a tower of mistakes that would eventually topple and bury me. The worst part, my parents saw it coming. They saw everything. They saw the storm forming long before I felt a single raindrop. And nothing breaks a parent more than watching their child ignore the very dangers they're trying to protect them from. One evening, my mother left a note on my desk. She didn't dare say it to my face because she knew I wouldn't listen. The note said, "I don't want to control your life. I just want to keep you safe. Please don't shut us out. We love you more than you know." When I read it, I felt something twist in my chest, but I pretended I didn't. I tossed the note aside and went back to my world of noise, distractions, and temporary pleasures. Looking back now, that note was a warning, a soft warning, a gentle plea from someone who saw all the dangers I refused to see. But I ignored it. just like I ignored everything else. The truth is, I wasn't rejecting their advice. I was rejecting the idea that I could be wrong. I wanted to be independent, but I confused independence with isolation. I wanted freedom, but I confused freedom with recklessness. I wanted to be an adult, but I rejected the very lessons that turn a child into an adult. The distance between me and my parents grew wider and wider. Every time they spoke, I heard an attack instead of care. Every time they warned me, I heard doubt instead of love. Every time they advised me, I heard control instead of protection. And because I twisted their love into something negative, I pushed them further away. I didn't notice how their faces changed. I didn't notice how their voices softened. I didn't notice how this is some worried late at night when I wasn't home. I didn't notice how they whispered to each other, asking themselves where they went wrong. I didn't notice any of it because I was too busy living for today, too busy ignoring tomorrow, too busy pretending that consequences only happen to other people. I thought I was untouchable, but nobody is untouchable. Life doesn't let arrogance go unpaid, and one day life would present the bill, a bill far more painful than I ever imagined. But in that moment, in those months of pride and denial, I believed I was winning. I believed rejecting my parents' advice made me strong. I believed ignoring their warnings made me independent. I believed walking my own path made me wise. I didn't realize I was walking toward a cliff they tried to pull me away from, a cliff I refused to see, a cliff that would change everything. The day my life changed didn't begin with thunder or warnings or anything dramatic. It started quietly, almost peacefully, like any other day. I woke up late, stretching lazily as sunlight filled my room. My phone was filled with messages, friends asking me to hang out, invitations to go drinking, pictures of last night's party. I scrolled, half smiling, half asleep, with no idea that my entire world was about to collapse. I went downstairs expecting breakfast on the table, expecting my mother's soft smile and my father's usual silence behind a newspaper. But instead, when I reached the bottom of the stairs, the air felt wrong, heavy, still. My father was standing in the living room, not sitting. My mother was next to him, holding a stack of papers against her chest like she was afraid they might fall apart in her hands. They weren't smiling. They weren't even breathing normally. It was the first time I felt something crack inside me. "Sit down," my father said. His voice was quiet but sharp, like a knife wrapped in cloth. I frowned, confused, annoyed, but I sat. My mother placed the papers on the table. Bills, debt notices, bank statements, overdue payments. I didn't understand at first. Numbers never meant anything to me. Money had always been just there, a resource that never ran out, a river that always flowed. "What is this?" I asked, half joking, waiting for someone to tell me it wasn't serious. But my father didn't smile. His jaw tightened, and he looked older than I had ever seen him. "We're in trouble," he said. Those 3 words didn't make sense. Trouble was something that happened to other people, not us, not to my family, not to my father. He was strong, successful, unshakable. He was the man who always provided, always solved everything, always came home with the weight of the world hidden behind a calm face. "What do you mean?" I asked. feeling a strange coldness in my chest. My father took a long breath. "The business is failing," he said. "We lost a major investment. We've been trying to recover, but it's not enough." My mother reached over and held his hand. Her fingers trembled. That was when fear finally hit me. Not because of the papers, but because my mother was shaking. My mother never shook. "How bad is it?" I whispered. My father looked directly into my eyes, and the truth was brutal. "We might lose everything," he said. The room felt smaller. The air felt thinner. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Lose everything? The house? The car? The comfort? The life I took for granted? For a moment, the world spun. My mind raced back to all the warnings I ignored, all the nights I wasted, all the money I threw away without thinking. Suddenly, every word my parents ever told me hit me like a punch to the chest. "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" I asked, my voice cracking despite my efforts to sound strong. My father looked at me with tired eyes. "Because we wanted to protect you," he said. "We hoped things would improve. We didn't want you to worry." My chest tightened even more. Protect me from reality, from the consequences of the life I lived so carelessly? My father continued, "But things got worse, and now we don't have time anymore." My mother looked at me with eyes full of sadness. Sadness, but also something else. Fear and guilt, as if she believed failing financially made her a bad parent. That broke my heart in a way nothing else ever had. "What can we do?" I asked, my voice small, almost childlike. My father exhaled. "We need to cut expenses," he said. "Sell things, reduce everything, and—" He hesitated, and that silence sliced through me. "And you," he continued, "need to start taking responsibility." My stomach dropped. Responsibility? For the first time in my life, that word terrified me. I swallowed hard. "What do you want me to do?" I asked, though deep inside I already knew the answer. My father took the final stack of papers, job applications, internship listings, part-time positions. "You need to work," he said. "You need to learn how to stand on your own 2 feet. We can't carry you anymore." My mother placed a hand on his arm, as if begging him not to be too harsh. But he shook his head. He wasn't angry. He was done protecting me from reality, and reality had sharp teeth. I looked at the papers and felt something I had never felt before. Shame. Not the kind of shame you hide, the kind that crushes you slowly, painfully. Because in that moment, I realized something devastating. My parents had been drowning while I was busy living like a prince. They were losing sleep while I was partying. They were sacrificing while I was wasting. They were breaking silently while I was laughing loudly. And now the price of my ignorance had arrived, and it was much heavier than I ever imagined. My father stood up and walked toward the window. His shoulders slumped, his voice low. "I warned you," he said softly. "We both warned you, but you didn't want to listen." My mother wiped her eyes gently, as if trying to hide her pain from me. "We never wanted you to feel this," she whispered, "but we can't protect you forever." I wanted to say something, anything, but my throat felt tight and dry. For the first time in my life, I had nothing to say. No excuses, no arguments, no attitude, just silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. My father finally turned to me. Son, he said, this is the moment that will define you. You can either keep pretending life is easy, or you can grow up. His words weren't sharp, they weren't loud, they were simply true, and truth hurts deeper than anger ever could. My heart felt like it was breaking, not because we were losing money, but because I finally understood how blind I had been. My father walked past me, placing a hand on my shoulder, a hand that felt heavier than any weight I'd ever carried. Tomorrow, he said quietly, you start looking for a job. Then he walked away, leaving me alone with the shattered pieces of my old life. My mother stayed behind for a moment. She sat next to me, her voice soft but firm. We love you, she said. We always have. That's why we warned you. Her hand gently touched my cheek. This isn't punishment. This is life asking you to grow. And then she stood and walked after my father. I sat alone in the living room, surrounded by bills I didn't understand, consequences I deserved, and a silence that felt louder than any argument we ever had. The house suddenly felt unfamiliar, cold, fragile, like one touch could make everything fall apart. And maybe it already had. For the first time in my life, I felt scared, truly scared, because this wasn't a scolding. This wasn't a warning. This was reality, and it had arrived without mercy. My parents were right, and now I would have to face the cost of never listening to them. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in my bed staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying everything. My father's tired eyes, my mother's trembling hands, the stack of bills on the table, the silence that filled the house like a thick fog. For the first time, I understood what fear feels like. Not the kind of fear you get from a scary movie. Not the kind that makes you jump. This was a slow, heavy fear that pressed on your chest, a fear that whispered, "This is real, and you caused part of it." I kept asking myself the same question. How did we get here? But deep down, I knew the answer. I ignored every warning. I wasted every opportunity. I lived like consequences didn't exist, and now they were knocking on my door. Early the next morning, I heard my parents downstairs. They weren't arguing. They weren't complaining. They were just quiet. That worried me more than anything. Quiet meant they were tired beyond words. Quiet meant they were trying not to scare me. Quiet meant they were holding themselves together so the house wouldn't fall apart emotionally. I walked downstairs slowly, almost ashamed to face them. My father was drinking coffee, staring blankly at the news but clearly not watching it. My mother was packing lunch for him like she always did, except today her movements were a little slower, a little heavier. "Good morning," I said softly. They both turned. My mother forced a smile. My father didn't. "Eat something," he said. "You have a long day ahead." I nodded and sat down, but my stomach was in knots. Food tasted like nothing. After breakfast, my father handed me a folder with job listings he printed from the night before. "Try these places first," he said. "They're hiring." I took the folder, feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "Dad," I tried to speak, but he shook his head. "Don't apologize," he said firmly. "Not with words. Show it with action." That sentence hit harder than any punishment, because he was right. My words meant nothing now. Only what I did next mattered. I left the house with the folder in my hand and a pit in my stomach. I had no idea how to find a job. I had never filled out a job application. I had never written a resume. I didn't even know where to begin, but I walked from shop to shop, from cafe to cafe, from small offices to busy Schreibtischfrontieren tours. Each place was the same. They looked me up and down, asked about experience I didn't have, asked about skills I never learned. Sorry, we're looking for someone with experience. Sorry, we need someone who can work full time. Sorry, we're not hiring anymore. Leave your application. We'll call if something opens. But no one called. The rejection stung, but what hurt more was realizing that I was useless in the real world. I had nothing to offer. No skills, no discipline, no experience, no proof that I could be trusted with responsibility. Everything my parents warned me about was true. Everything I ignored had now become a barrier. Hours passed. My legs hurt. My throat was dry. I felt small, powerless, stupid. I sat down on a bench outside a small shopping center and buried my face in my hands. For the first time, I truly understood how hard life could be. I understood what my parents carried every day while I lived without worry, and guilt washed over me so intensely I felt it in my bones. As I sat there, I overheard two men talking behind me. One said, "Man, I'm so tired. I worked a double shift last night." The other replied, "Yeah, but we have no choice. Family doesn't feed itself." Their words echoed inside me. They were strangers, but their struggle felt personal, because my father had lived like that for years. My mother had worked silently behind every decision, every meal, every bill, every worry, and I had done nothing. I stood up again, determined not to walk home without trying harder. I walked into a small grocery store, not fancy, not impressive, not something I ever imagined myself doing. "Are you hiring?" I asked the manager. He looked at me, really looked. Maybe he saw the desperation in my eyes. Maybe he saw someone who needed a chance. "We need someone for stocking and cleaning," he said finally. "It's heavy work, early mornings, late nights, minimum pay." I swallowed hard. "I'll do it." He raised a brow. "You sure?" "Yes," I said, my voice steady. "I need this." He handed me a form. My hands trembled slightly as I filled it out. It was messy, unprofessional, full of blank spaces where skills should have been, but it was honest. When I returned it, the manager nodded. "Come tomorrow at 6 in the morning." 6 in the morning. I had never woken up that early for anything in my life. But this time I didn't complain. I didn't question. I didn't negotiate. I simply nodded. "Thank you," I said quietly. The walk home felt different. The world looked different. I wasn't proud of the job. I wasn't happy. But I felt responsible, like I had taken the first step into adulthood. When I walked in the door, my parents looked up immediately. They didn't ask if I got a job. They didn't want to pressure me. But when I said, "I start tomorrow," their expressions changed. My mother covered her mouth with her hand as tears filled her eyes. My father nodded slowly, a small but meaningful gesture. "Good," he said. "Very good." The next morning, my alarm rang at 5 a.m. I wanted to sleep. My body screamed for it, but I forced myself up. I took a cold shower to wake up. My mother had already prepared a small breakfast and a simple lunch. "You'll need energy," she said. My father walked me to the door. He didn't say much, But just as I stepped outside, he placed a hand on my shoulder. "This is the beginning," he said. "Make it count." The grocery store was nothing glamorous. The floors smelled like detergent. The back room was cramped. The work was physical, lifting crates, stacking shelves, sweeping floors, carrying heavy boxes. Within the first hour, my arms were shaking. Within 3 hours, sweat dripped down my back. By noon, my legs felt like they were made of concrete. I wanted to quit. My mind whispered, "This isn't you. You don't belong here. Just go home." But another voice, quieter but stronger, said, "Your father did harder things for you. Don't quit." That voice kept me going. Every time my muscles screamed, I thought of my father staying up late to pay bills. Every time I felt embarrassed, I thought of my mother holding back tears over financial stress. Every time I wanted to give up, I remembered the look on their faces the day they told me the truth. I wouldn't go back to being the person who ignored them. I wouldn't be that child again. Not now, not ever. When my shift finally ended, I felt like collapsing. But as I walked home with tired legs and sore hands, something unexpected happened. I felt proud. The kind of pride that doesn't come from money or gifts or praise. The kind of pride that comes from earning something for the first time in your life. When I entered the house, my mother saw my sweaty shirt and tired eyes and rushed to me. "Are you okay?" she asked. I nodded. "Yes," I said. "I'm tired, but I'm okay." My father appeared behind her. He didn't smile, but his eyes softened in a way I had never seen before. "Good job," he said simply. Just 2 words, but they meant everything. That night, as I sat on my bed, exhausted but awake, I realized something important. This wasn't punishment. This was transformation. Life wasn't destroying me. It was rebuilding me. And all the pain, all the effort, all the struggle, it was the price of the lessons I refused to learn earlier. I finally understood my parents' warnings. I finally understood responsibility. I finally understood reality. And tomorrow, I would wake up and do it all again. Not because I had to, but because I needed to. Because growing up starts the moment you stop running from life. And for the first time ever, I wasn't running anymore. The first week of work felt like walking into a different universe, one I had never bothered to imagine before. Every morning my alarm rang at 5, slicing through the silence like a sharp blade. I would sit on the edge of my bed, exhausted before the day even began, staring at my reflection in the dark window and wondering how many years my parents had lived exactly like this. For years I had woken up to comfort. Now I woke up to responsibility, and responsibility was heavy. On the 4th morning, my hands were swollen from lifting boxes. My shoulders ached every time I moved. My back screamed with every bend, every twist, every effort. Yet somehow, standing in that cold grocery store at 6 in the morning, I felt more alive than I ever had in the countless nights I wasted partying. Work humbled me in ways I never expected. It stripped away arrogance. It stripped away excuses. It stripped away the illusion that life would always be soft. It revealed the truth. Life demands effort, and for the first time I was giving it. The manager, Mr. Carter, wasn't friendly, but he was fair. He didn't care where I came from or what life I had before. He only cared about whether I showed up and did the job right. "You're slow today," he said one morning without looking up from his clipboard. I wanted to explain I was tired, that my whole body hurt, that I wasn't used to this kind of work. But instead, I just nodded. Yes, sir, I'll move faster. And I did. Not because he demanded it, but because I demanded it from myself. There was no room left for excuses. Around me, co-workers who made half my former allowance were working 3 times harder without complaining. There was Luis, a middle-aged father of 3 who lifted crates heavier than mine without flinching. There was Maria, a young mother who worked 2 jobs and still smiled at every customer who walked in. There was Joseph, a retired veteran who stocked shelves with quiet pride, humming old songs under his breath. I watched them closely. I studied them. They had something I had never had: resilience, strength, pride in effort, a sense of purpose that didn't come from comfort or privilege, but from doing what needed to be done. They didn't lecture me. They didn't judge me. They simply lived with dignity, and their actions taught me more than any warning my parents had ever given. After work each day, I dragged my tired body home. The walk felt longer every evening, but the moment I stepped through the front door, something magical happened. The house felt warmer. Not because anything changed, but because I changed. The first evening, my mother looked at the blisters forming on my palms. She gently held my hands and whispered, "You're working hard." I nodded. "I'm trying." She looked like she might cry, but she didn't. Instead, she said something I'll never forget. "You finally see the world the way your father sees it." My father rarely commented, but every night when I came home, he would glance up from his chair and ask the same question: "How was work?" And every night I answered honestly, "Hard." He nodded every time, the same way with the same quiet expression. "Good," he said. "Hard is good. Hard means you're growing." I never understood what he meant until that week. Hard wasn't punishment. Hard was purification. Hard was transformation. Hard was the beginning of maturity. One evening, after a particularly exhausting shift, I entered the store's back room to grab the mop. Mr. Carter was there, leaning against a stack of boxes, watching me. "You look tired," he said. I laughed weakly. "I am." "Thinking of quitting?" he asked. I looked at him, truly looked at him, and shook my head. "No, I need this." Something softened in his expression. Not sympathy exactly, but respect. "Good," he said, "because tired is temporary. Growth isn't." I carried that sentence with me long after I left work. It replayed in my mind as I walked home under the dim streetlights, my uniform stained, my hands rough, my legs shaking. Tired is temporary. Growth isn't. I thought back to the days when I woke up at noon, when I spent money without thinking, when I believed I was unstoppable. That old version of me felt like another person entirely. Someone entitled, someone shallow, someone fragile. But now, even though my body ached, I felt stronger. Not physically, mentally. Emotionally, spiritually. Work was changing me. Not instantly, not dramatically, but steadily, quietly, deeply. Each shift stripped away another layer of the naive kid I used to be. Each hour taught me the value of effort. Each challenge built a piece of the adult I was becoming. After the first week, my paycheck came. It wasn't much. In fact, it was smaller than the amount I used to blow in one night with friends. But when I held that envelope in my hands, something happened. Something I never expected. I felt proud, deeply, overwhelmingly proud, because this wasn't money given to me. This wasn't money handed out in generosity. This was money earned with sweat, with pain, with effort, my effort, and that made it priceless. When I got home, I placed the paycheck on the table in front of my father. His eyes flickered. Not surprise, not joy, but something heavier, recognition. He picked up the envelope, turned it over, and then looked at me. He didn't say, "Good job." He didn't congratulate me. Instead, he said something far more meaningful. "Now you understand," he said, and I did. For the first time in my life, I understood what it meant to earn, what it meant to sacrifice, what it meant to contribute. I understood why my father always came home tired, why my mother always worried about money, why they warned me again and again about responsibility. I understood everything I had been blind to, and with that understanding came something I never felt before: gratitude. Gratitude for their sacrifices, gratitude for their patience, gratitude for the life I had taken for granted for so long. That night before going to bed, I sat alone in my room and thought about the person I used to be. The version of me who ignored advice, who wasted time, who trusted the wrong people, who believed life would always be easy. That version of me was gone, not because I hated him, but because I outgrew him. Growth is painful. Growth is uncomfortable. Growth requires shedding who you were so you can become